Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, in memory of the destruction and loss that we've experienced in our history. And we'll be using some of those verses throughout. Echa yashva badad ha'ir rabati aham hayeta ke'almana rabati vagoyim sarati bamedinot hayeta lamas.
O city, how desolate you lie, you who once swarmed with crowds, once great among the nations, how you mourn like a bereaved spouse. Once you ruled the territories in graciousness, now you toil in servitude.
Good afternoon and welcome to this Interfaith service of Martyrology. I'm Amy Yoder McLaughlin. I'm the pastor here at Germantown Mennonite Church, and I'm delighted to participate in this service with Rabbi Linda Holtzman and Reverend Ann Thatcher from St. Martin's in the Fields in Chestnut Hill. In 2014, I ran into Linda at a New Sanctuary Movement event. We often run into each other at these things. And I had just agreed to lead a delegation to Palestine with Christian peacemaker teams. So when I saw Linda that day, I put out a crazy idea. Want to go to Palestine with me? And within 48 hours, Linda had said yes. And before you knew it, we had 6 Christians and 6 Jews taking this trip together to Palestine in 2015. Unfortunately, Linda broke her arm right before the trip, so she couldn't go. But she did join me this summer along with Pastor Ann and several other folks from Philadelphia and also from around the world. Martyrology is a tradition that is shared both with Jews and Mennonites. Mennonites have this strange little book called The Martyr's Mirror. It's actually not little, it's quite big. We remember in this book those who have died before us as witnesses to the faith. And Jews celebrate those 10 rabbis who were martyred by the Romans at the destruction of the Second Temple and all those who have been martyred since. For both Christians and Jews, it is important for us to remember those who went before us, those who stood up when it wasn't safe, those who followed the path that was right, but certainly wasn't popular. So today, as Christians and Jews, we gather to remember our Palestinian friends who have nonviolently resisted the occupation at the expense of their safety, their livelihood, and their lives. Our service is focused on the experiences from our trip this summer to Ramallah, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Hebron. If you are looking for facts, graphs, and statistics, this is not the service for you. We are here today to share our experiences, what we've seen and learned in occupied territory. Following our sharing through scripture, poetry, and story, we will open the space for questions and responses.
I come from there. I come from there, and I have memories born as mortals are. I have a mother and a house with many windows. I have brothers, friends, and a prison cell with a cold window. Mine is the wave snatched by the seagulls. I have my own view and an extra blade of grass. Mine is the moon at the far edge of the words and the bounty of birds and the immortal olive tree. I walked this land before the swords, turned its living body into a laden table. I come from there. I render the sky unto her mother when the sky weeps for her mother. And I weep to make myself known to a returning cloud. I learnt all the words worthy of the court of blood, so that I could break the rule. I learnt all the words and broke them up to make a single word. Homeland. Mahmoud Darwish.
Chetchata Yerushalayim Al Kain Lenidayeta Kol Machbedeha Hiziluha Kira'u ervata Gam hi ne'encha v'tashavachor.
Jerusalem, greatly you have sinned. You are thrown away like a dirty rag. Those who once revered you now hold you in disdain, now that they have seen your nakedness. What could you do but cry out and turn your face away?
Aida Palestinian Refugee Camp, 1948 to present day. Bethlehem, West Bank. We went to visit the Aida Refugee Camp, which lies in the shadow of the separation wall and the guard tower next to Rachel's tomb. Our journey took us through a Palestinian cemetery alongside the wall, and we walked slowly among the tombstones in the midday heat. And I was highly aware of the wall on my right, and I kept glancing at it out of the corner of my eye. And within a few minutes of our entire group entering the cemetery, I spotted a soldier on top of the wall watching us. And I began to think how we were walking defenseless and exposed towards Aida camp. All the small evergreen trees in the cemetery had been recently uprooted, and I thought there must have been some storm to do such damage to this green life that is so rare in this desert part of the world. But I found out later that the soldiers destroyed them, uprooted them, to prevent Palestinians from hiding there. We continued through the cemetery and down the dusty road to the Laji Center, a community center, and ahead of us was a giant key, the shape of a key, over the road like a gate. 1948. Palestinians were displaced from their homes in Jerusalem and Hebron during the Nakba, and they settled here in Aida. Because after 2 years, Aida was really started about 1950. 2 years of journeying, they were still not allowed to return to the homes from which they fled. And in their fleeing quickly, so sure that they would return, they brought the clothes on their backs and their house keys. Nothing more. But it is 2016, and they are still there. And this key gate marks their hope, the hope of returning one day, and their keys of their homes are passed on from generation to generation in witness of that hope. So many people in this camp over time. The population has continued to grow. They have nowhere else to go. And yet the Israeli government will not allow building permits to be passed. And so it is a very overcrowded place, and they build up as much as they can on their existing homes. And they're full of boarded up windows that are boarded to protect from the tear gas and the rubber bullets from the IDF when they raid the camp on a regular basis. And that hope that is present in the key is also there in the Laji Center, a cultural center in the community that teaches Palestinian cultural dance and has shelves of books. And with help from outside communities, they built a playground. And it is beautiful to see that these children have somewhere to play with one another when they have lived such difficult lives. And last year they installed AstroTurf in, and they created a soccer field. And there was so much joy at the center as they shared with us about this new soccer field. And then they said, but we had to install a net over the top, because the soccer field lies within view of the guard tower. And the soldiers in the guard tower, when they see the children playing soccer, they shoot tear gas at the soccer field. And so they erected a net to protect the children from being hurt by the tear gas canisters. And I stood on the field and I looked up, and there, collecting on this net above my head, are dozens of tear gas canisters. How do they protect their children in this place when they create a playground and even there the children are not safe? They mourn the children that were killed. The killing of children at a certain year, and I apologize, I don't have 2014, 258 children were killed by Israelis in the camp. And they have written all of their names on the wall in remembrance.
Naomi Shihab Nye, a wonderful Palestinian poet, wrote this poem, Jerusalem. I'm not interested in who suffered the most. I'm interested in people getting over it. Once when my father was a boy, a stone hit him on the head. Hair would never grow there. Our fingers found the tender spot and its riddle. The boy who has fallen stands up. A bucket of pears in his mother's doorway welcomes him home. The pears are not crying. Later, his friend who threw the stone says he was aiming at a bird, and my father starts growing wings. Each carries a tender spot, something our lives forgot to give us. A man builds a house and says, I am native now. A woman speaks to a tree in place of her son, and olives come. A child's poem says, I don't like wars. They end up with monuments. He's painting a bird with wings wide enough to cover 2 roofs at once. Story. Why are we so monumentally slow? Soldiers stalk a pharmacy. Big guns, little pills. If you tilt your head just slightly, it's ridiculous. There's a place in my brain where hate won't grow. I touch its riddle, wind and seeds. Something pokes us as we sleep. It's late, but everything comes next. Eini nigra vilo tidme me ein hafenot ad yashkif vayera Adonai min hashamayim.
tears flow continuously from my eyes, refusing to comfort. All of this while God watches from the heavens.
I told some of this story last night, but I need to keep telling it because it's such a bizarre, absurd event. We're standing in the middle of a street in the old city of Hebron. So if you've been to the Middle East, you know that the old cities are really old, and the streets are very narrow. And there is commerce on either side. There are just people with stands on either side. And there are children playing in the streets. And it's very alive. The old city of Hebron is much quieter than that in most places. And partly it's because of events like this. Above the city of Hebron, there's a very large settlement that is called Kiryat Arba. And there's a giant sign on the settlement that says, Kiryat Arba hi Hebron. Kiryat Arba is Hebron, is the real Hebron. And the settlers from Kiryat Arba are there because they believe that the land is theirs, that it was promised biblically. And they want to go and show everyone they can show all of the biblical sites in the old city. And they don't care who it disturbs, what commerce is stopped, what children can't play, or who are tormented by their presence. But every single Saturday afternoon, every Shabbat afternoon, the settlers and often dozens and dozens and dozens of their friends and guests and tourists come through the old city in Hebron. So while they come, though, they're walking through a Palestinian neighborhood. So they claim that they need protection because it's dangerous for settlers to be walking through a Palestinian neighborhood. So not only are they very heavily armed, almost all with guns showing from their pockets, but there are dozens and dozens of Israeli soldiers surrounding them, walking through the city with guns almost as large as they are. They walk through the town a bit, they stop, they point out a site, they then continue walking for as long as they want. As many hours as they want. Children can barely play. No one can do any business. It just stops for the settlers. And the people, the Palestinian people in the community, stand around the outside and watch. And watch with amazement, but also with a certain fear. Because there are Israeli soldiers carrying huge guns. And at any moment, if someone does something wrong, who knows what could happen? What shocked me the most was the little children, little Palestinian children, who are playing, just playing. And the Israeli soldiers, I'm talking about soldiers, right? We're talking about 18-year-olds. Are 18-year-olds marching through with their guns, playing with the little Palestinian children. And everyone is playing, and everyone is relaxing a bit until a child does something wrong. Kicks a stone, does something that a little child might do, considered wrong by the soldier. Suddenly the soldier is no longer playing. He's standing up straight, has a gun at the ready, glares at the children. The children in Hebron experience this every week. Every week. In honor of the Jewish Sabbath, right? In honor of Shabbat. And then, as part of the Christian Peacemaker team, we witnessed. We just walked in front and behind as the tour passed. And one soldier, a young man, looked up at us and said, "Where are you from?" And we told him mostly the United States, but there was one man who was from Australia, and he said, "Oh, Australia. My brother lives in Melbourne." And I said, "So why did your brother leave Israel to go to Melbourne?" And he kind of looked around, and he said, "The stress." And he looked at us with a certain shame in his eyes, and he said, "You think we're terrible people, don't you?" And I said, "No, we don't think you're terrible people. We think you're people caught in a terrible system."
From East Jerusalem, 1987, Beit Shalom. Always there is migration on this restless planet. Everywhere there is displacement. Somewhere someone is always telling someone else to move on, to go elsewhere. Night, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. Jerusalem, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, Hebron, Ramallah, Nablus, Katana, Jenin. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, O Hebron, may I forget my own past, my pain, the depths of my sorrows.
Echa yuam zahav, yeshna haketem hatov, tishtapechna avnei kodesh, birosh kochutzot.
The fine gold has faded, tarnished beyond recognition. The stones of the sanctuary are scattered. They lie on every street corner. Rabbi Linda described some of the ridiculousness of the occupation, particularly in Hebron. One of the other things we experienced in that beautiful city is just how difficult it is for Palestinians to move around the city. The Christian Peacemaker Team's office is in the Old City, and from their office, you should be able to get to Hani's house up the hill in about 5 minutes. Except there's a big wall by the front door of the office blocking us from getting onto Shahada Street. So instead of going through that entryway, we go all the way through the souk and then back down again to checkpoint 56, where we met Hani, who would take us to his home. We realized when we got to the checkpoint that they were letting one Palestinian through the checkpoint every 15 minutes. It was a drama of checkpoint, which is pretty normal. But in order for us to get through this checkpoint, it was going to take us 4 hours. So Hani suggested instead that we take a taxi up the hill. So we took a rather harrowing 10-minute taxi ride from checkpoint 56 through the neighborhoods and up to the top of the hill, where we encountered another checkpoint, which really looked like someone had put a metal detector in the middle of the street randomly and a rickety table next to it. All of us on the delegation made it through this checkpoint without any trouble. I don't even think we had to show our paperwork. But when Hani got to the checkpoint, he had to put his papers, his wallet, his coins, and everything on the table, and then step away with his hands up. And when they looked at his papers and agreed that it was safe for him to go through, which, by the way, this is his neighborhood that he's walking into. He goes through this checkpoint multiple times a week. But when the soldiers had decided he was okay to go through, they let him through. And we walked down the hill towards Hani's backyard, which has been claimed by the Israeli government as an archaeological site, which is pretty normal, strangely. But they've claimed this as an archaeological site and no one is allowed to go through it, but it's Hani's backyard. So he takes us through the site and we begin to go to his home, but we're stopped and turned away by soldiers. So we come back up and we decide to go back down the hill for one more try to his home. And we make our way through backyards, through olive groves, through strange little makeshift walkways till we get to Hani's home. If it weren't for checkpoints and walls, it would have been a 5-minute walk to Hani's home. The way we had to go that day, it was an hour and a half. And Hani does this several times a day because he has businesses in the old city. And despite all this, and I know Linda will talk more later about this, but despite all this, there is a sense of hope and continuing on and persistence in living on their land.
The place where we are right. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow, and a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. Yehuda Amikai.
Shavat masos libenu, nepach le'evel mecholenu, nafla teret roshenu, o nalanu ki chatanu.
Joy has disappeared from our hearts. Our dancing has turned into mourning. The laurel has fallen from our heads. Pity us, for we are sinners.
We love life whenever we can. We dance and throw up a minaret or raise palm trees for the violets growing between two martyrs. We love life whenever we can. We steal a thread from a silkworm to weave a sky and a fence for our journey. We open the garden gate for the jasmine to walk into the street as a beautiful day. We love life whenever we can. Wherever we settle, we grow fast-growing plants. Wherever we settle, we harvest a murdered man. We blow into the flute the color of far away, of far away. We draw on the dust in the passage of the neighing of a horse. And we write our names in the form of stones. Lightning brighten the night for us. Brighten the night a little. We love life whenever we can. Mahmoud Darwish.
Gun control in this country has become a very hot topic. And I can tell you on our trip, I was very uncomfortable with the guns that I saw everywhere I traveled. And so were a lot of the members of our delegation. And we met with someone with the American Friends Society, a Quaker organization. She is an Israeli citizen, a young woman, and a conscientious objector. And she talked us through the mindset that is taught to Israelis from the time they enter school, to help us see from their eyes how they see the Arabs in their community, how they see the Palestinians. And I would say that for us, maybe if there was a This American Life episode where there was a viewing of a police killing of a black man, and we had a reporter meet with a police officer, and they viewed the video and talked from their own perspective what they saw. And the disconnect was extraordinary. So the militarization of Israeli society was, when I heard it, was beyond my wildest imagination. There are little children everywhere who wear shirts with guns and tanks and aircraft, all sorts of military things on them. Education's at the core of this process because one of the goals of the educational system is to prepare kids for military service. And the Israeli flag has the sword and an olive branch together. The message that the military will bring peace. In underfunded areas, they teach and tutor in uniform. The children's counting sheets in the first couple grades have military items. They count tanks and guns. And they also count things like doves and olive trees. There is a military and police fair for 4th and 5th graders in Jerusalem. And a father posted recently a photo of his daughter at a table with all the guns, and she's standing next to a child who is holding an M16 with a police officer standing next to this young girl and coaching her on how to hold it. They're putting helmets on children and showing off weapons. And he says that the children don't even want to be there, that the adults are more excited about this military fair than the children are. Soldiers teach in high school classrooms about the military units, and there is a soldier college fair day so that when you graduate, you know which unit you would like to go into. And unit assignment is a sorting for employment after your service. That is an access point into Israeli society, and a lot of high-level politicians in Israel all served in the military. And if you want to go that route, it's important that you serve as your first stepping stone. On Memorial Days, the 12-year-olds read the names of the Israeli martyrs. In 11th grade, all students go through a week of basic training. They learn how to run and how to shoot at age 16. In 12th grade, they travel to Auschwitz to remember the story that is taught. And the story that they're taught is that every generation someone tries to exterminate us, and every generation God will save us. And the someone that will exterminate us are the Arabs. They are taught to see every Palestinian as an enemy. Teachers get bonuses for high enlistment rates upon graduation. And when they begin their service in the IDF, they are taught that when you are at a checkpoint, you are saving your people from extermination. They don't pay very much. And lately, because they are not paid well in the military, but they are expected to enlist, the number of deserters due to leaving in order to earn money for their families has increased. And those are the people that end up in military prison. 70% of those in military prisons are deserters, and 94% desert due to economic hardship. Currently, 13,000 deserters a year are being imprisoned.
These words bring us to the end of Echa, of Lamentations. Please join with me if you know them. Ha-shivenu, ha-shivenu, Adonai elecha, v'na shuva, v'na shuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu Kiketzem.
Bring us back to you, O God. Let us return. Bring us back to better days, like days long past.
So there is hope, and we saw hope in the trip that we just experienced, in the everything that we saw. We saw strong, smart, young Palestinian women who are running social justice organizations, Grassroots Jerusalem, and so many more who were so impressive and so powerful. We saw so many people who spoke to us who have the right to be angry and who are angry, but who, even with their anger, are finding ways to live fully and to make a difference in the lives of their people. We saw organizations like Roots, which is an organization of Palestinians and settlers who try to talk together and work together. We had our doubts about many things with Roots, but they're trying. And then we saw the Parents Circle, started in 1994 by an Israeli whose son was killed by Hamas. It's grown to 620 families, Israelis who have family members killed by Palestinians, and Palestinians who have family members killed by Israelis. They give support to bereaved families. They call for change. They provide educational activities and summer camp. They have a narrative project that brings together Israelis and Palestinians in similar walks of life to learn about each other's experience. They pressure the government to end the conflict in a way that would be acceptable to everyone. They have members who range from left to right, and they're there together with each other. When asked what we could do, the Israeli who represented the Parents Circle said what so many others had said during our time in Palestine, had said, you know, the best thing you could probably do is support BDS, is pay attention to the Palestinian call, is boycott and divest and sanction and push Israel's government to change things, because nothing else seems to be working. Nothing is changing. And he taught us about an organization in Israel called Boycott from Within, of Israelis who are pushing to boycott anything that might in any way help the Israeli government. It feels as if, in small ways, there really is some hope.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I am gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere.
So we'll take some time for discussions, for questions. I would ask you to sit for a moment and think about those things you would really love to add to the conversation that you think would be something that all of us could hear that would just help us. Those of you who've been on this trip, either this year or last year, if you have something to share, we only tried to tell some of the stories. Tell more. Yeah, Laura, stand and talk, okay?
I think you need a microphone.
You might
Laura.
need a mic because of the live streaming. Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
It's on. You just hold it up very close to you.
My name's
Closer.
My name's Laura Sienna. I also went on the same
Closer.
trip. This year. I went this year. We met a lot of extraordinary people, but there's one whose story hasn't come up yet, and that's this guy Hamid, and I can't pronounce Kwazame? I did it. Okay.
There you go.
It's really impossible for us living here to fully understand how circumscribed Palestinians' lives are, from cradle to grave, and also just on a daily basis. It's quite hard to imagine that, I get in my car, I drive over here, I park, I come in, they can't do any of those things. So here's this man, very unprepossessing, I would say late 40s, little skinny guy. If you passed him in the street, you'd never notice him. But he runs a tiny little organization called the Hebron International Resource Network, and he raises money for really small projects like a playground next to a school where they have to take all the equipment in once they raise the money in the middle of the night, like through a graveyard, because it's not legal to build this little tiny playground. So he's just an amazing kind of grassroots, get-it-done, small-scale guy. So and he has support from different international groups, particularly sports teams in England and Scotland and places like that. And what he does to raise money is he does these athletic events. So he ran a marathon he'd never run before. He ran a marathon. He does all this. So his latest adventure is that he did bungee jumping where? In Scotland?
Somewhere in England, somewhere in the United Kingdom.
And I can't get this image out of my head of him, a photo taken of him from the top of the bridge that he jumped off of. And he's out there, and his arms are outstretched. And I thought, you know what? For that instant, he was free. In a way that in his life in Hebron, he's never free. So I've just been thinking about Hamid all week.
Laura's been thinking about Hamid since we left. I know you loved Hamid. And I promise you, she will bring him to Philadelphia, and we will all do a major fundraiser for his organization, and we will help him build whatever his next project is, a school, a playground, something wonderful.
And hopefully he doesn't have to bungee jump for that.
Yeah, he does not have to bungee jump once he's here, no. Sure. Get the mic, though, Simone.
So you may have to fill in some gaps for me. I was there actually last year with the Christian Peacemaker team, and something that I found to be a really meaningful part of the trip was when we actually were on the other side of the Green Line in the Negev.
Yeah.
And we actually met Palestinian citizens of Israel. And it really was moving to me to hear them actually demand their rights as Israelis. In Hebrew, I could actually understand, strangely enough.
Yeah.
And something else that really moved me, the man who was one of our guides, Amos, what was his last name?
Oh, I don't know. He was wonderful.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he basically, I think it might have been Lowell who asked him to tell his story. And he actually had been working in the occupied territories, but then after the Second Intifada, Palestinians basically said, okay, we really need to organize ourselves. We do not want Israelis necessarily working with us the same way. So then he basically decided to work, in the Israeli side of the Green Line with Palestinians, to work on anti-discrimination. And it actually made me think a little bit about stories I've heard about white folks at a certain point in the civil rights movement who was like, go take care of your own stuff. And by the way, Amos has an email that he sends out called Don't Say You Didn't Know. Marvelous email list, and I think it's now number 600 and something, but you hear about actual events that are going on the ground horrifically, and it is moving to me to continue to have this connection.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I know the militarization piece may have been especially hard to hear, and I want to say that what I struggle with in all of our journey and everyone we talk to is everyone's soul is damaged in this. No one is whole. No one is whole. And I was angry and saddened and all sorts of feelings for the Palestinians. I'm also really sad and angry about what's happening in Israeli society for the militarization of these young people and how they're learning to see the world and how that gives them such a narrow view and takes away their own lives too.
So thank you all. And for those of you who would like to stay for our final service of the day, I see a blend of people here, and those who are part of the Jewish community know that Ne'ilah is coming up and that it will end at 7 o'clock, and that's important because Yom Kippur ends at 7 o'clock. So we would like Ne'ilah, our service, and the holiday to end around the same time. And those of you who are not Jewish may not know that for lots of us, after services last night, we've been here since 9:30 this morning, kind of nonstop. So you are more than welcome to stay with us for the last hour of the day. Thank you. Thank you. So they weren't reacting to the militarization. The Israeli flag is 2 blue stripes and a star. So I'm not sure what you were describing.
What she was describing, I remember I documented exactly what she said, but I was off.
Because that's not the Israeli
Right,
flag.
right. So I wonder- yeah,
so
so
somebody down there's like, no,
Yeah.
wait. And I said,
Yeah, but
I
it's
know,
actually
but don't
about
worry
the
about it.
teacher thing that someone said no. Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, well, also the
flag
Holocaust trip too, and why they go is much more
Well,
complicated
I
than
couldn't,
that.
well, it is more than that, but
I know, I know, so that was the other reaction.
I could
Well,
not.
I'm just, I think it's fine. I think that when you are talking to a pretty knowledgeable Jewish audience, you're going to get that.
Yeah.
Push it again, and it's green. And its green is on.
Is there a military flag?
Maybe Chris pocket.
Maybe, or maybe this, I do
Clip
have
it onto your waist. Put it in your pocket. Whatever.
Sounds right for next time. Military flag.
All right, and you don't need me till $1, right? So
Right, and I just need to test, it's on now? It's on now. I don't hear it.
yeah, it's on. And as you start to sing more and project, it'll pick you up. And if it doesn't, I'll go back there and turn you up. Okay.
You don't do anything, I know. But
And
some
get
of them
off.
do, right?
Your mic is running out here, so you're going to need to switch these out.
Well, so what's good? Oh.
Yeah, that one's
Amy,
dead, yeah.
Does it matter? I told the kids to meet tomorrow and we'll clean up.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Is that all right?